It's been over 40 years now since my son and I built our first HO scale model train layout. It was on the bottom platform of his bunk bed that I built specifically for that purpose. This is not that layout, but it is based on that one, so that's why it matters. That layout couldn't have been much more than 3.5 feet wide by 6.5 feet long. And it ran an old second-hand 040 steam tank locomotive that wobbled down that track like a drunken sailor. Derailments were commonplace. Here's a sketch of that old track plan, near as I can remember. It's just a single loop of track squeezed together in the middle to create the illusion of double track running between two loops, one of them stacked up above the other one. But that's not how it started out. Our original design had just a single track between the loops. I then found out the hard way about the short circuit that creates with a two-rail electrical pickup system. I could still recall the devastated look of disappointment on the boy's face when we realized my mistake. A call to our helpful hobby shop owner confirmed the problem, and he told me of a switch I could buy. But it would mean throwing it every time the train re-entered that piece of single track. When I asked the price, I thought he said $45, so I declined. We were pretty poor back then. Then we figured out we could just put a piece of parallel track in instead. Later on, I realized I must have heard him wrong when he said $45, and that he'd really said $4 to $5. But it all turned out for the better because it made us accidentally discover what they call a folded dog bone schematic all on our own. It was even in a book. And besides, throwing that switch every 30 seconds or so would have been a real pain. In the years that followed, we drove around exploring real railroad features we could model on our dream layout. Pages of plans were drawn. Half of our two-car garage was finished off with walls painted sky blue. Track and rolling stock were accumulated. But boys eventually grow into young men, and other things soon command their attention. And I was left on my own to dabble loosely in the hobby. The big dream was never built, although I did get as far as bench work and track laid on a large freelance design just to watch trains roll. But the large size proved too overwhelming for completion. Years later, our son had his own child and we moved across the country to be close by. When we asked him if he wanted his old train stuff, he said no. So it was all bound for the auction block. Then my wife reminded me that I had a grandchild and warned me that I might be sorry one day if it was all gone. So I kept all the track and electrical components and the best engine and just the shorter cars that can negotiate the tight radius curves of a small layout, thinking that might be the best I'd be able to manage in the future. It was a couple of more years before a circle of that prefab track with the built-in ballast they have nowadays appeared around the Christmas tree and piqued our granddaughter's interest. So it was game on. Then those warm memories of that old first layout returned. The 040 engine ran through a tunnel under a mountain, with the track above running through a deep cutting in the rock. A wooden viaduct built with scraps from the lumberyard where I worked carried the train across the valley. I still have some of those pieces today. Like I said, derailments were commonplace, but I'd learned a few things since then. So it was back to the drawing board. I would rebuild that old first layout, but this time there would be a town in the upper loop and some industries tucked in along the main line for freight switching. I went with 4 by 7 feet this time for more reliability, and extended the double track shank section another half circle, creating a second tunnel. Here's a sketch of the new version's main line with the switch tracks removed for clarity. Here we see the double track extended over the tunnel, imparting the impression of a busy double track Class 1 railroad. That added length also allowed the straight section at the passenger station to be level for more switching capability. The view block isolates the section in the lower foreground, creating a feeling of distance traveled on a lonely stretch of single-track main line. I first made it only a partial block, but wasn't satisfied because 2 points that were supposed to be far away from each other ended up beside one another again in the yard area. That wall there used to be against the upper track, making both lower tracks visible where they go under the building. I moved the whole thing over and extended the view block a little farther. That little boiler room addition on the large building was originally added to span those 2 tracks. The little L-shaped depot building fits in one of the 3 corners where the track runs to the edge for possible future expansion. It may seem unusual to put the yard right in the middle of everything, but it's just an expansion on the original design, having the widest space inside the loops of track. That leaves more upfront viewing of the main line along the outside edges. The town streets were arranged at a 45-degree angle to the edges to break things up a little. Here we see the DC control panel. The track is broken into 16 sections that can be switched between either of those 2 throttle controls for running 2 engines at the same time. Swinging by the turntable now, and the yard office made out of leftover building parts. I scoured the internet for the smallest mine building kit I could find so I could use the ore cars that I already had. A bit of the tail wagging the dog. As it turns out, it's the story of much of the layout. Here we are at that level section of double track made possible by the 4-foot width of the new version. The track nearest is the reversing section, requiring its own separate direction switch, like that one the hobby shop owner described. Taking either of the 2 crossovers reverses the direction of the train over the route. The grain elevator also exists because of reverse logic. I already had a covered hopper car, and it needed a reason to exist. Behind it, winding through the trees, can be seen the curve of the upper loop track. I modeled it like a decrepit branch line one may see meandering through the bowels of any city, reaching out a grasping tendril to perhaps the last surviving, struggling concern of a once bustling industrial area, relating a sense of history in the march of time and progress. It's likely doomed to abandonment, hence its lack of maintenance. The spur track buried in the street was installed the way it had to be, and without any plan for what its industrial building would be like. I liked the idea of the large warehouse, but it was too long to use its loading docks, so I bumped it out with the backdrop kit. It both made it work and gave an honest impression of how industrial buildings get added to and are adapted over time. The front half of the first floor was cut off and moved to the back to create the lower fourth floor. Up on the overpass, we have the double-ended town siding for runaround switching movements, and its other industrial spur track. I had no idea what would go there either, but I'd kept a lumber shed and barn and the little office for the move because they were small. The tower helps disguise the reconverging loop tracks as a junction. A trick I learned from that John Armstrong book. The little fueling station is a die-cast metal kit. And the mountain backdrop is mounted on thin plywood. It unscrews from the back. The other side of the pass also lifts off. Also, the bridge is easily removable, as is the view block behind it. It's just foam with crumpled craft paper over top of it and painted with acrylic paints. The bare plywood area is the footprint of where the old view block was. To remove the bridge, slide these two rail joiners to the left. Lift this end, then pull the bridge out of the other end's rail joiners. Everything more than about an inch above the upper track is removable, so the whole thing can be laid on its side and make the turn out the door into the other doorway, and so on down the hall. Well, that's about it for this time. I hope you enjoyed the tour as well as our little journey back into the past. Anyway, that's why I did what I did and how it all came to this in the end. If you're planning the train layout yourself and you don't work in the real railroad industry, I suggest proceeding only after a read of this book. I'm on my second copy, having long ago worn out the first. There's lots of cool stuff in it, like this for example. Next time we'll examine some other things about the layout, like what the heck this thing is, and what's it for, what does it do, why is it here, and how the heck did it ever get there in the first place. Well, Until then, I'll just say adios.